Hey everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at this 2020 Mercedes-Benz GLB. So the GLB is all new for 2020. It is a compact SUV, and the first question that a lot of people probably ask is, why does Mercedes-Benz have yet another compact SUV? Kind of confusing. So this thing technically is slotted in between the GLA, which is a subcompact SUV, and the GLC, which is another compact SUV. It does technically offer room for up to 7 people if you opt for a third row, but it's still pretty small. It's within 2 inches of the GLC in terms of length, and it does offer a little more cargo area than the GLC. But I've kind of been asking myself this same question: why does the GLB exist? And over the course of this week, I've kind of come to understand it like this. Mercedes introduced a front-wheel drive vehicle architecture about 10 years ago, and in the time since, most all of their small cars have ridden on this new front-wheel drive architecture. Now, this is with the understanding that the rest of Mercedes lineup has historically relied on rear-wheel drive. So they've been investing heavily in this front-wheel drive architecture. So while the GLB is similar to the GLC in size, they're really 2 very different vehicles. The GLB is based on a front-wheel drive platform. The GLC rides on a rear-wheel drive platform. I kind of understand the GLC as more of an SUV version of the C-Class, which is a bona fide sports sedan. The GLB here, on the other hand, I've kind of come to think of it as a really, really nice version of a Honda CR-V. Front-wheel drive uses a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, gets slightly better gas mileage than the GLC. It's a little bit less expensive than the GLC, but yeah, that's really the best way I can describe it. Beyond that, Mercedes is really just kind of splitting hairs with SUVs, given that they're just so popular these days. So hopefully I've kind of conveyed the reason that this car exists. Still a little murky to me, but anyway, without further ado, let's do a little tour of the GLB. So when Mercedes was teasing this thing, they talked about it as being a baby G-Wagon. And right off the bat, I have to make very clear that this thing is nothing like a G-Wagon. It's not really off-road oriented. Its profile is boxy, I'll give it that. And the G-Wagon is probably the most iconic boxy SUV of all time. But like I said, front-wheel drive car architecture, essentially. This one has all-wheel drive, and like most modern crossovers, it's got some buttons inside that make the all-wheel drive system do some different things that might get you down a dirt road a little bit more comfortably, but in terms of off-road capability, this thing really doesn't have much. Not a bad design. I do like the boxy shape. I've always been a fan of boxy SUVs. This thing will offer you more cargo space than the GLC, given that its roofline is boxier. It's got a taller greenhouse. This one has the AMG package, so it's got these 20-inch wheels. It's not a bad looking SUV for what it is. Let's check out the cargo area before we hop behind the wheel. Power tailgate. So like I mentioned, one of the big selling points of this thing is that you can get it with a third row. Strangely though, my test vehicle here doesn't have the third row. So that would typically reside, well, right here. And as I'm sure you can see, there is not much room at all back here. Mercedes is pretty clear that that third row is really only meant for small children. I don't think a fully grown adult could even fit their legs back there. It does have a cargo cover. You can see some lighting back here. Elastic nets to stash some things there. Something I noticed, they talk about this thing having like mild off-road capability. Pretty much everyone does that these days. But if you're going to advertise a vehicle driving down a dirt road, you should probably at least offer it with a real spare tire. You can see there's no spare back here. You do get a patch kit and a little compressor there.
Really
love Mercedes modern interior designs. This thing is all new for 2020, so it has the latest generation of Mercedes-Benz interior. And you can see that comes with this dual screen setup. So it's all one panel, but that panel houses two separate screens. You've got a digital gauge layout here, and then touchscreen infotainment system that can also be controlled via this pad here. I really like it. It's one of my favorite interior designs. I think the infotainment system is good. It's intuitive, easy to use. I give it a thumbs up. Let's take a look at the window stickers. So, as you can see, this is a 2020 Mercedes GLB 250 4MATIC. That means it has all-wheel drive. You can also get this thing with just front-wheel drive. The base price is $38,600, but you can see as equipped, this one is $57,475. That's kind of steep for what the vehicle is, a front-wheel drive crossover. The interior is pretty nice, so it makes up for that with a really premium experience, at least I think. Under the hood is a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine putting out 221 horsepower and 258 pounds-feet of torque. I should add that engine is turbocharged. Surprise, surprise, like the 2-liter 4-cylinder you find in pretty much any other crossover these days, turbocharged. That is paired with an 8-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. The transmission's okay. It can be a little bit lurchy on takeoff from a dead stop. It has a start-stop feature. I don't love that. I find it to be a little bit invasive, at least in Mercedes-Benz execution of it. Fuel economy for this thing, a little bit better than the GLC, about 3 mpg better all around. That's worth noting. This thing gets 23 city, 31 highway, and 26 combined, according to the EPA. This one is pretty well equipped. It's got the driver assistance package, parking assistant package, exterior lighting package, multimedia package, the night package. Yeah, that's an appearance package. It's an AMG line model, so it's got AMG body styling, perforated front discs, and Mercedes-Benz lettering, and the specific AMG diamond block grille. And then it's also got the premium package. So this thing is pretty much loaded. So $57,000 seems like a lot, but when you factor in that the vehicle is loaded, it's about the most you could expect to pay for one of these. Another thing worth mentioning, this is the latest version of Mercedes-Benz design language. I know I've mentioned that already. The GLC that you can currently buy now was introduced for the 2016 model year, and it just received a facelift for 2020. So that still kind of uses the older generation of Mercedes interior design language. The console isn't as functional. The gauge and the infotainment system aren't combined like they are in this vehicle. They don't take this like shelf approach that I think works really well. So that's another reason to maybe like the GLB over the GLC if you don't care about the other things. Anyway, great steering wheel design. It's kind of got a flat bottom here, pretty functional center console. There's a place to stash things here. Cup holders are here. These are your infotainment controls right here, and then a place to rest your palm here. This is just a fixed area for resting your palm. The center console box could be a little bigger. This is kind of something that's common with European cars. It's just not really functional here. Extendable thigh supports, which are cool. So there it is all the way in. There it is all the way out. That's nice on a long drive. Panoramic sunroof in this one. Kind of two separate panes there, but you see it. Yeah, let's hop in the back seat. Okay, so the first thing I notice when I sit down back here is that given this is one of these forced 3-row compact SUVs, it's got a second row that can slide forward and backward. Bear with me. Let's try this one. There we go. Yeah, so the second row can slide forward to give the third row passengers a little bit of room. Again though, this one doesn't have a third row, so the sliding second row is kind of weird. Decent interior materials back here. Sometimes you'll see nice materials used on the front doors and cheap materials used on the back doors. That is not the case with the GLB. Back doors are just as nice as the front doors. I like these grab handles here. Back here, you've got two air vents, and then open this thing and you've got a 115 volt 2-prong outlet and then 2 USB-C ports. I appreciate Mercedes-Benz use of USB-C. Burmester sound system. Here's another look at that sunroof. So one thing that I don't like about the sunroof is that this is a transparent fabric up here, so it lets a fair amount of light through. Like it's about noon right now and the sun is pretty high in the sky and there's really no way to totally block it out from above. So yeah, not my preference. I'd rather this cover up here be completely opaque, but oh well. Okay, driving the GLB. I think I've said it before, but I really like this interior. It's minimalist, but not to the degree that it cuts out essential buttons. Like there's still a row of HVAC controls below the air vents here. The infotainment system is good. There are two different ways to control it. It's a touchscreen, but you've also got a touchpad on the center console here. I think it's pretty close to being perfectly executed. There's 50 miles per hour. I wouldn't call this thing fast. 220 horsepower. It is a base engine. There will be an AMG variant or two, I think. Transmission in this thing is a little lurchy. It's an 8-speed dual clutch automatic, and at takeoff from like a dead stop, sometimes it'll jolt you a little bit. I noticed that. Got a little bit old. In terms of shifts under hard acceleration when you're already up to speed, it's fine, no complaints. Glad it's not a CVT. The cabin in this thing is pretty open and airy. I'm sure you can see behind me. There's pretty good visibility. Some light coming in through the ceiling. Like if you hold your hand up here, I can feel heat coming through the sunroof here, even though I've got the shade closed. I just wish it was a totally opaque cover, like I've said. This thing is definitely kind of a down market Mercedes-Benz product. Something that luxury brands will do is establish themselves as a luxury brand and then introduce products that are further and further down market, meaning products that cost the company less and less to develop and build. But since people associate, for example, Mercedes-Benz with luxury cars, they can kind of look the other way and still buy the thing, still pay a premium for it, even though maybe it isn't quite as high-end as other Mercedes-Benz products, or as most Mercedes-Benz products were 15 or 20 years ago. So I wouldn't call this a cheap interior. There's not a whole lot of evidence of cost cutting, to be honest, and I can usually find that pretty quickly, but no, the stuff is fairly high-end. Not a lot, if anything, to criticize about this interior. Back to the subject of who this vehicle is for. Still don't really have an answer there, other than just Mercedes-Benz has recognized that sport utility vehicles are the new normal. Everyone's buying SUVs. Nobody wants sedans anymore. And I assume they just wanted another sport utility to offer Mercedes-Benz customers. The third row in this vehicle probably shouldn't be a selling point. If you need 3 rows, this is not the vehicle for you. Go out and buy a Kia Telluride. It'll cost you $15,000 less, and it'll offer way more room. That has a usable third row, and it gives you most of the features that you can get in the GLC here. Back to my initial analogy, this to me feels like a really, really nice Honda CR-V, and what's ironic there is that the CR-V is actually offered with a third row in Australia. They don't sell the 3-row CR-V in the US. Volkswagen Tiguan is another compact SUV that's offered with a third row. The Lexus RX comes with a really, really, really small third row if you go for the RXL model. So this is kind of a new class of small SUVs that have a third row, really just for the sake of saying that they have a third row. And yeah, I think it's fair to call this a Mercedes-Benz product. A lot of these new generation of European luxury cars built on these front-wheel drive platforms are often criticized for not being a real Mercedes or not being a real BMW. The GLB feels like a real Mercedes to me. I don't have a lot to criticize other than just that weird positioning between the GLA and the GLC. It's kind of another version of the GLC almost, but built on a crossover platform. And I think that about does it. So thank you for watching. Yeah, GLB. Boy, we've got a lot of SUVs these days.